What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan, and guys, we are officially entering into the dark times. It is February 13th, 2023, which means that it is the day after the Super Bowl. It is officially the dark times until we get to free agency, the NFL Combine, which is just a couple of weeks away. There's really not a lot of additional information to talk about. I did want to give a quick recap on my thoughts on this Super Bowl 57. I realized I was one Super Bowl behind. I think I've been calling it LVI. It's actually LVII, so 57. Just off by one there. Hard to keep up with that. But anyway, just wanted to talk about this, talk about my general thoughts of the game. I loved this Super Bowl. I didn't have a particular rooting interest. I was kind of cheering more for the Eagles. I thought the Eagles would win this game because of the injury to Mahomes earlier in the postseason, the fact that the Eagles' defense was so good and could create so much pressure. Now, they didn't create nearly as much pressure as I thought they would this game. In fact, I don't know that they even got a sack when I'm thinking back about this one. Let's see here. What they did manage to do is with Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts was able to showcase his ability as a passer and as a rusher. Had he won, he would have easily been the MVP, first quarterback to rush for 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl. Looked great. He also threw for 300 plus yards. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, 182 yards for 3 touchdowns, so he was efficient, but just didn't get the yardage there. Some of that was the defense. Some of that was the fact that they just didn't have their hands on the ball very much, even though they scored a lot. The Philadelphia Eagles, their whole game plan was keep the ball out of Mahomes' hand. Mahomes threw for 27 total passes, so they did keep it out of his hands. But the guy that came alive, and I think I said this might be a good thing for the Chiefs or something that they needed to potentially win the game, Isaiah Pacheco coming in for 15 carries for 76 yards, 5.1 yard per carry average and 1 touchdown. Now, again, I said the Eagles have a solid defense, but the place that they were lacking in, they have a great pass defense, and they have a solid QB rush, but they were lacking a little bit. They were middle of the field in rushing defense. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs were middle of the road in rushing offense, but a middle-of-the-road rushing offense typically outplays a middle-of-the-road rushing defense, and outplay it did. They had 158 yards on the ground, which is what ended up being the difference for them. Jarrett McKinnon, he had a big run, a couple of good plays in there. Patrick Mahomes, I didn't think he'd be running for all that much, but he had 44 yards, and a couple of those were huge plays to keep drives alive. On the other side of the ball, Jalen Hurts, 304 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, and 3 on the ground. He had 70 yards on the ground, 15 carries. Looked great. I don't think they missed a single 4th down conversion or 3rd down conversion where they were doing a QB sneak. They showed the prototypical QB sneak and what to do. You had guys like Devonta Smith, who was amazing for 100 yards and 7 catches. A.J. Brown, 6 for 96 with a touchdown. Dallas Goedert, 6 for 60. Kenneth Gainwell even got in on the receiving with 4 for 20. Speaking of Kenneth Gainwell, while Jalen Hurts was their primary rusher, Gainwell looked like the better rusher for most of the game, even though it was tough sledding. He only had 7 rushes for 21 yards. Certainly felt like he was more of a presence on the field for them. But again, they won through the air, which is where they were probably going to have to win. So the number 1 rushing team only got 115 yards on the ground, but they did manage 304 yards through the air. Again, this was an incredibly well-fought game, close throughout the entire thing. 2 big things that happened that I think are the key differences in this game. The first one, the Jalen Hurts fumble. Didn't get touched. It was a scoop and score for, I think his last name's Bolton. Yeah, Nick Bolton. Scoop and score for Bolton, who also happened to be the lead tackler for the Chiefs. Said he almost had another scoop and score had they not called that an incomplete pass to Sanders. It would have been a scoop and score for another touchdown. Can't even imagine what the odds were for that for the Super Bowl. But anyways, all that said, that was a pivotal moment where it looked like the Eagles were about to take off and go down the field and score again and put the game out of reach, make it 21-7. Instead, it ended up being 14-14. And then, again, the Eagles, it was all first half for the Eagles for the most part. They ended up being 24-10 at the half. So, yeah, Eagles played incredibly good football here, with the exception of the fumble. As far as the refs go, the refs, for the most part, called a great game all the way up until 58 minutes into the game with just under 2 minutes. You had the not pass interference, but the defensive holding call on Juju Smith-Schuster. I can't remember who did it. I'm thinking it might have been Gardner Johnson. That sounds maybe right. James Bradbury. I don't know. I don't remember who did it exactly. But Juju, there were a couple problems here. First, it didn't really look like it was a defensive hold to me. I think that is an incredibly questionable call if you haven't been calling that type of thing all game, to call it in that spot where there's no timeouts left for the Eagles. The game is on the line. Let the guys play at that point. If you don't have a good idea or if it's going to affect the outcome of the game there, let them play it out. As it was a third down. You were going to have, and again, Juju broke off and got free. It was a bad throw from Mahomes. It didn't affect the route nearly enough to have screwed up the play. So, again, I know they were calling for the flag. They made it seem like it was obvious. When I saw it, it was not an obvious penalty, and I think it's one that we could have not called and had a better game. It was what everybody wanted, was for the Kansas City Chiefs to kick a field goal, and then the Eagles have 1:45 left to potentially come back and either tie or win the game. And we never got that opportunity. Instead, we ended up with just 8 seconds left after the Chiefs very incredibly intelligently did not go for the touchdown, but instead chose to do ball control. I think the Eagles would have been enormously better to do one of two things. Either push McKinnon out of bounds as he's making that run, or pick him up and carry him into the end zone and get your touchdown so you can get the ball back. As it stood, they kind of just backed off of him altogether and gave him the option on what to do, and he very smartly slid at the 1 yard line, kept the ball from going in, and that's all she wrote for ball control and for clock management. I think it was an incredibly smart move by the Chiefs. It's not the move you want to see in the biggest stage. It's kind of a cheap move in that regard, but still, if your goal is to win a Super Bowl, that was the play. And I can't fault them for it. The Chiefs came back. Mahomes got hurt right there going into halftime. Came out, still played incredibly well in the second half. I have no faults with this game. Otherwise, I do wish that hadn't happened. But this was one of the better Super Bowls that I can recall in my lifetime. Halftime show was pretty good. Rihanna. I'm not the biggest Rihanna fan personally, but I didn't think it was a bad show overall. I think she's come out now and said that she was pregnant, which is just even more kudos to her. She went out solo, didn't bring in anybody, and was able to perform and do her thing while pregnant on stage. That was incredible. I'm not sure that is 100% confirmed yet, but I think I saw something this morning that said she was pregnant with her second child while she was doing that. We'll wait for the official news on that one. But guys, that's all I got for you. Again, we're heading into the offseason. I will have a video at some point this week, probably later on in the week, about some offseason offensive targets that we could go for as Falcons fans. But it's going to be kind of scarce on videos here for a while because there's just not any news. I'm really trying to get to that next benchmark by the end of next season, which would be 500 to 1,000 subscribers. Would really love to hit that, but we're probably not going to have that kind of success until we get to the season again, because most people don't care about NFL news when there's not any news to have. Only other thing I'll say, Derek Carr is not going to be a Saint, which I think is good news for us. At least he's not going to be in a trade. He could certainly still get picked up and sign a deal with him, but we'll see what they do there. That might be breaking news later this week. But thank you guys so much for watching this first season of Rise Up Reactions, the show where, again, I talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and the sports news of the day. I have truly appreciated being your humble host, Dr. Lee Denning, this year. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, sharing, and subscribing. It means the world to me. Keep watching. This is not the end. I've got a ton more content coming out over the course of the next year. It's just going to be scarce for a little while here. But again, thanks for watching. And as always, guys, rise up.